Welcome into the Stampede. My name is Ryan Jones. Thank you for spending your morning, afternoon, evening with me. Whatever it is for you, I hope you're having a fantastic day. My good friends Nick Romero and Ashton Yanez join me as always. How are you guys doing today?
Good.
Fantastic.
Well, if you've been following along with the series, we just finished up the AFC with the AFC South, and today we're going to be going to Nick's favorite division in football, the NFC West. He's going to be covering his, I don't want to say hometown, that'd be kind of strange, but
It's not
definitely his favorite
hometown.
team. Yeah, it's not hometown, but it's definitely his favorite team, the Seattle Seahawks. I will be covering the Arizona Cardinals and the San Francisco 49ers. Ashton is going to be rebuilding the Rams, although they probably don't need that much rebuilding. Let's just jump into it. If you've been following the series, this is how it works. We're going to be going worst to first based on record in the division. That doesn't necessarily mean they are the worst or the best team, but numbers don't lie, do they? So, all right, let's get started with San Francisco 49ers, who I have. And number one, because it's the most important position in football, San Francisco 49ers need to figure out their quarterback situation. Here's the deal. You
Mhm.
either move on for Jimmy Garoppolo or you don't. I don't think that they could really trade up in the draft. And there's not a free agent quarterback or quarterback available on the market besides Russell Wilson, Deshaun Watson, who they're not going to be able to trade for. That would be upgrade over Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't think Jameis Winston and Marcus Mariota would be an upgrade over Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't think Ryan Fitzpatrick is. Sam Darnold and Drew Lock definitely aren't. So, look, this is the offseason to figure this out. There's so many options. You can go in the draft if Trey Lance, Justin Fields, Zach Wilson are available. Rumors that have it that they could trade for Kirk Cousins. If you could somehow pull Deshaun Watson out of your you know what, do it. But I just don't think that they have the capital or the. I just don't think they can. To be honest with you, all upgrades, all of those guys I mentioned are upgrades over Jimmy Garoppolo. But you can't go into every single offseason with the same exact question. This is the question that they had in last offseason, the offseason before that. Or should they upgrade over from Jimmy Garoppolo? Like your roster and your coach and the talent you've built around are great and good enough to win a Super Bowl, as we saw. They were one quarter away from beating the Chiefs. And I think with all them coming back healthy, San Francisco has a really good chance to go from worst to first in this division. And I know that Nick would agree with me on that. And he's a Seattle fan. So just figure out the quarterback situation. If you can upgrade, do it. If not, just put a little faith in Jimmy G because he's shown that when he plays at his highest level, he can be a franchise quarterback. Number two, I put corner. And the reason I did that is because Richard Sherman, Jason Verrett, Kwan Williams, and there's like two more corners. They're all free agents. So I don't know if they have a single quarterback on their roster right now. And if they do, it's probably not anybody noteworthy. They're not going to be able to re-sign all these guys. Ideally, they can re-sign like one of them, maybe, but they don't have the cap for that because, as you can see, is my number 3 point re-sign Trent Williams. You have to do everything you can to re-sign Trent Williams because you spent so much draft capital acquiring him. Corner was a need with Richard Sherman, Jason Verrett, and Kwan Williams on their roster. So you really, really need to. You're sitting at 12. J.C. Horn should be available. If Sertan or Farley are there, you should pick them. I mean, at this point, I kind of like J.C. Horn a little bit better than Caleb Farley, but that's just me. Let's move on to number 3. Resign Trent Williams. You spent, like I already said, you spent good draft capital to acquire him. You need to resign him at all costs. He's going to probably end up having to be the highest paid tackle unless somehow he views himself as unless he takes like a lower deal because he's a veteran, which I don't think will happen. You're in a division with Aaron Donald, Chandler Jones, J.J. Watt. Seattle used to have Carl Lawson, but I don't think that he's going to be resigning there. But you have all these good edge rushers and defensive tackles. I mean, hell, Aaron Donald lines up at edge rusher sometimes anyways. You have to have good tackle play in this division if you want to compete and be a winner. So yeah, those are my 3 things for the San Francisco 49ers to achieve their ideal offseason. I was going to just put get a new medical staff here as a joke, but I mean, the Niners have shown that top to bottom, they're one of the best organizations in football, so I'm not going to call for any job there.
Yeah, I really like your priorities with the Niners, and I really think number 1 and 2 are definitely going to correlate and have an impact on each other because depending on what they do with the quarterback situation, if they decide to keep Jimmy G, that allows them to spend more time and effort on the situating the corners, especially since they don't really have any, as you said, Ryan. But if they decide to take it easy and get some cheap free agents and low draft picks and corner, because they might have a plan in maybe getting Deshaun Watson or getting another high-profile quarterback, then yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what the Niners' priorities are. I do think, Ryan, you did hit the nail on the coffin with 1 and 2, but in regards to what 1 and 2 order it's going to be for the Niners themselves in the front office, it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I think they need to move on from Jimmy G, and I think they should go the draft route. It'll be cheaper. They could spend more money. Trent Williams is probably going to get over. I believe Laremy Tunsil's the top right now at like 20. It's 20 plus. So Trent Williams is probably going to get 20 plus more a year. So they're going to have to spread cap elsewhere, and they've shown that they can draft really well. Their whole defensive line was like first round talent, and we saw where that took them. So I think they just need to move on.
San Francisco currently has the 12th most cap space in the NFL, sitting at $31 million. Let's move on to the Arizona Cardinals, who look like they were actually going to make the playoffs. I actually have the Cardinals, so I'm going to go back to back here. Okay, so number 1, they need to add another piece along the defensive line. Although you just signed J.J. Watt and you have Chandler Jones, who's an elite pass rusher, you could make this defensive line the best in the division and possibly the best in the NFL if you just add another piece at defensive tackle. Ideally, they are picking at pick number 16. Christian Barmore should be available there. And if not, you could try to pry Shelby Harris away from the Broncos. Shelby Harris would be a great fit in this defense. He already played for Vance Joseph, who's the defensive coordinator. So if you could pry away Shelby Harris or draft Christian Barmore out of Alabama, the defensive tackle, I think that would make this defensive line the best in the NFL, hands down. Number 2, the Cardinals need to continue to improve their offensive line. Last year was an improvement. I believe they actually ranked, if I'm not mistaken, the 12th best offensive line in the NFL. Let me double check on that really quickly. Yeah, PFF ranked them the 12th best offensive line in the NFL. They have a great tackle duo in Kevin Beachum and DJ Humphries, but the interior of their offensive line is really lackluster. So if you could fill that with just starters across the board instead of replacement level starters, you have to take on Aaron Donald twice a year in this division. And both times he played the Cardinals, he absolutely destroyed their interior of their offensive line. If you can get a Creed Humphreys, a Wyatt Davis in round 2, or maybe Elijah Vera Tucker in round 1 at pick 16, that would be ideal. The Cardinals currently have let me double check how much cap space they have. They have the 16th most cap space, sitting at $21 million. So bringing in an interior offensive lineman via free agency is not out of the question either. Number 3, they need to replace Patrick Peterson. Byron Murphy has been an absolute stud for them coming out of the University of Washington. So Byron Murphy's been an absolute stud for them, but outside of him, you don't really have much. You're losing Drake Kirkpatrick as well. Robert Alford is still on the roster. He played all right last year, but he's not a guy that you'd be comfortable starting on the boundary. He's more of a guy that you want to start in the slot. I keep talking about the 16th pick overall just because J.C. Horn would be a good fit here in Arizona at pick 16, or you could also go the veteran route, maybe sign over a Richard Sherman or Jason Verrett from the 49ers, or go out and sign another veteran in Xavier Rhodes, who had a career year for the Indianapolis Colts.
Yeah, Ryan, I really like how you prioritize line for both offense and defense for Arizona. I think when you're playing the Rams and the San Francisco 49ers twice a year, knowing how good their O-lines are, knowing how good their defensive fronts are, playing against Aaron Donald and Bosa twice a year, you've got to prioritize that offensive line, especially if you plan on winning the run game battles between both teams. Replacing Patrick Peterson, it's not going to be easy. Even though he's definitely a little bit past his prime, he's still a solid defensive back, and it's really hard to find guys like them in free agency. Maybe they can try and sneak their way up in the draft and get either J.C. Horn or Caleb Farley. It'd be nice, but I really like how it'd be ideal for Arizona to really focus on the offense and defensive line, especially when they have a division that's just full of tough, big guys.
Yeah. The number one need is, they need to upgrade that. Seattle, the Niners, and the Rams all are like run first teams. So if your defensive line just gets pushed around, it's gonna be a long day for you. And they have good pass rushers, but their interior, they're not like the best. So I really think that that's the area that they could improve.
All right, let's move on to Ashton's assigned team, the LA Rams. Only about 4 or 5 hour drive from where we are currently at. So,
yeah, so this is the, I guess, second closest team because San Francisco is about an hour and a half from us. But I have the Los Angeles Rams, who last year had a 10-6 record and lost in the divisional round to the Green Bay Packers. They just acquired Matthew Stafford in a trade and got rid of Jared Goff. Not only do they have a quarterback with 10 fingers, but they have a quarterback who's played consistent throughout his career for such a long time, especially playing for the Detroit Lions, which has always been a mess. So now you put him in a spot where he can really succeed, have a lot of weapons, and be part of a smart head coach. And then you also have a defense that's led by Aaron Donald and has Jalen Ramsey. So, Ryan, you already brought this up in the beginning. They're not rebuilding. They already have the necessities to be a contender in the NFL. So not my number one priority for them is simply to stay healthy. I know it's weird to kind of bring this up simply for any NFL team, but as we saw with the 49ers last year, anything's possible, and you could easily just lose your team because you just drank out of the wrong water faucet. So I think if you're the Rams, your biggest priority is just making sure everyone stays healthy, everyone gets the right fluids in, everyone gets the right post-practice workouts and stuff in. Like, do all the physical therapy stuff right now so you don't have any injuries to deal with later on. Number two, if they want to really make things interesting in their division and make life a little bit easier for Aaron Donald, lease a solid edge rusher for a year. If you can, distract the offensive line and create more one-on-one situations for Aaron Donald, especially on 3rd and long, that Rams defense is really going to be just nearly impossible to stop. And then number three, draft where you think you're lacking in depth or where you think you're going to lack in depth. I know, obviously, because of the CBA, the Rams now have $10 less million to spend, and so does the rest of the teams in the NFL. So obviously, you might have to move some money around just to accommodate for the rest of your roster. But draft where you just think you might have some depth. I think wide receivers are okay. They might want to go defensive back or linebacker, but this is a team that's really, in my eyes, fairly complete. I think maybe just having, again, a more consistent, solid edge rusher would really help them get to the Super Bowl. But this is just a good team all in all, and I think the number one priority is to just stay healthy.
Well, you touched on it about them drafting where they lack depth. That's something that this organization has really hit on the last few years. A lot of people, including myself last year, thought the Rams were going to finish 10. I predicted 6-10 and lost in their division. Instead, they go 10-6, and they're clearly the best team in their division. I know Seattle finished with a better record, but I think even Nick would agree that the Rams were clearly a better team last year, at least from the eye test and how far they made it into the postseason, considering the Rams did beat the Seahawks in the postseason. So one hole on their defense, in my opinion, is linebacker. They desperately need someone to fill the void in the middle. They don't have a first round pick this year, do they? No, they don't. I don't think
for a while.
Yeah, they don't have a first round pick to sit till I think it's like 2020.
They haven't had one since they drafted
2027.
It's something ridiculous.
If you could get a guy like a Nick Bolton or a Zaven Collins, two of the top linebackers in the draft that most people don't consider to be first round picks, if you can get that in round 2 or round 3, that could really solidify your defense. And like you touched on it, Ashton, this team has negative $32 million in cap space. They now have more negative cap space than the New Orleans Saints. I just want to say hats off to the Saints, who we're going to be talking about in a later video. They're only negative $10 million under the cap. So they are The Saints are making moves right now. The Rams are going to have to do something similar in order to get out of cap hell. They are completely screwed financially, but as you said, this team is ready to win now.
Yeah, and they've been the number 2 point. They've been doing this for years now. I mean, they had Robert Quinn for a year, 2 years, but then he broke out and got a big deal. Well, then they got Leonard Floyd this year. He broke out. He's probably going to get another big deal. The Rams can't afford it, but they're just going to have to keep doing that because Aaron Donald takes 3 people to block him. So usually the edge rushers are always one-on-one. So if they could get a guy like another big name, then yeah, they're in really good shape.
Before we move on, I'm not sure what the status on Andrew Whitworth is. I know he's like 42 years old. I don't know if he is considering retiring or not, but if Andrew Whitworth happens to go down with another injury like he did last year, or just decided to call it quits this year, the tackle needs to be a priority for the LA Rams. Their offense will not work without an elite tackle, and we saw that when Andrew Whitworth went out. Their offense sputtered a lot. Let's move on to Nick's favorite team, the 12th man. This Seattle Seahawks went 12-4 and lost in the wild card round to their predecessors, the LA Rams.
So I have Seattle. It's my favorite team. I mean, this has been the same question for ever since Wilson got drafted. Why are they not paying for an offensive line? Why do they keep thinking that they could draft guys in the 5th round or find people off the streets and turn them into elite linemen? I don't know. Russell Wilson came out and, pretty much said he's got hit too much, which I believe he's got hit he has 400 quarterback hits since he entered the league, which is more than anyone. So it's not like he's lying. And I feel like that it might push them to finally okay, let's pay for one. Like Corey Linsley from the Packers, that's ideal. He had a really good center, and he'll make the right calls and he'll set the lineup to make sure that everyone's doing their job. Number 2 is edge rusher, which is the same thing. It's been the same question for a couple years now. I mean, we're going into free agency without a number 1 pass rusher, just like we did the year before, and just like we did the year before that. I don't know why they didn't just extend Carlos Dunlap, push his cap down this year because the cap's lower, but we'll see. Ryan Kerrigan is a good option. We were linked to him for trade talks, and he's a free agent. He's losing time to Chase Young and Montez Sweat. And number 3 is get a 3rd receiver. People might not think it's a need because Tyler Lockett, DK, but in the second half of the season, when teams started to figure us out, our offense was pretty bad, and they were shutting DK down and they were shutting Lockett down, and we don't have that Julian Edelman type of person in the slot that can just find holes and open the offense up for Russell Wilson. And even when DK and Tyler are getting locked down, there's this sneaky good receiver in the slot that could make plays still. And Emmanuel Sanders to me would be ideal. He just got cut, and I just think he'd be a really good fit in this team. And we have $17 million in cap, and that number could easily go up with restructures, more cuts, trades, whatever. So it's not out of the window that we could go out and actually spend big money.
Like you said, it's not out of the question. Seattle, I just actually pulled it up, Spot Track. They've somehow, since you last wrote $17 million, freed up $4 million more in cap space, and they're now sitting at $21 million. I don't know what they did, but they have done that. Seattle's, according to PFF, they are the 14th ranked offensive line. I don't know how much I would, there's a few times I disagree with PFF, but this is clearly one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL outside of their left tackle. So, and, I will say there's arguments out there that Russell Wilson sometimes ring the hits on himself. I would argue that is only because he's trying to do everything behind this offensive line, and he's trying to extend plays. And when you have a grumpy old man as your head coach that doesn't like to do anything but run the football 50 times down the middle, look, halfback dive can only work so much. I don't want to get on a Pete Carroll rant like I have multiple times throughout the NFL season with Ashton, but my goodness, it's time to upgrade at head coach. It is time to get a progressive thinker in here you have arguably one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time sitting in your wings, and you are just refusing to even let him have some input. Like, you don't think Brady has any input in Tampa Bay or in New England? He had input in New England. I guess he just didn't have as much as he thought as he wanted to. But you don't think Brady has input right now in Tampa Bay? He's going to be basically their GM. Let's be real here. Regardless,
Yeah.
let's. I want to stay on topic. I would argue that a lot of Seattle's needs are on the defensive side of the ball. Quentin Dunbar, I believe, is a free agent. So Shaquille Griffin. So they have a gaping hole just as San Francisco does at corner. I always love the idea of a Richard Sherman reunion to Seattle. If they could somehow pull that off, I mean, he fits the defense perfectly, as we've seen in the past. So if they can kind of get past that awkwardness, angriness, whatever it is that Richard Sherman holds towards Seattle, I would do that in a heartbeat. Is that realistic? Probably not. But cornerback is a huge need for Seattle, in my eyes.
Yeah, I agree, Ryan. And Nick, I do agree with you, though, having the number one priority for Seattle is that O-line. You know, it's weird to believe that PFF even ranked them somewhere in the middle because, in my opinion, they were one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL. Russell Wilson was scrambling almost every other play. What Patrick Mahomes dealt with in the Super Bowl, Russell Wilson was dealing with year-round. So O-line is definitely a big need. And while, you know, and it's a big reason to have because – not only are you blocking Aaron Donald, not only are you blocking Bosa, but Arizona just acquired J.J. Watt. So now you have three of these guys who are all pro, first or second team all NFL that you got blocked twice a year throughout a scattered time period. So O-line's definitely a big priority. With Pete Carroll, it's funny, Ryan, talk about how he plans on running the ball 50 times. He runs the ball on every time, but times when it matters most. I mean, Nick, I'm sure your heart's still broken about the Super Bowl, third down and goal from the one. You have Marshawn Lynch, who's still in his prime. You were one halfback dive away from winning the Super Bowl. And instead, Pete Carroll likes to try and do those pick plays on those slant and flats on the outside in the red zone, which still to me is just confusing. It was actually the reason why they even lost to the 49ers not last year, but the year prior for the NFC West championship game, basically. But number two, edge rusher, I do think they would need another edge player. I know Jamal Adams, he's basically been doing everything defensively, but if you can let him do less stuff and let him help in coverage more or let him be that strong safety and kind of cover slot receivers or tight ends, it's really going to make it a lot easier to defend opposing offenses, especially when you have Kyler Murray and a complete LA Rams offense that's led by Matthew Stafford. Getting a receiver would be nice. I think with Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf, if they plan on keeping both players long-term, I don't know if they'll have the money to get a good third wide receiver. Ideally, maybe they can get someone like Cole Beasley, just someone that is relatively cheap, a little bit past his prime, but again, can just sneak away and find holes in zone coverage. But if they can just get the O-line situated, I think they can make any receiver work, especially with the running backs that they have as well in the backfield who have been catching balls for Russell Wilson.
That third receiver, while it would be nice, I think that they need to go after corner, edge rusher, they need defensive tackle help. I think that there's so many other priorities that, getting a third receiver would be nice, but you're going to have to settle probably in that category for like a gadget guy, maybe like a John Ross type of player, a speedy guy that's more of a gadget guy. You can give it to screens, you can give it to on, end rounds and whatnot. But then again, you can make the argument, why wouldn't they just do the screens, the gadget plays? Why wouldn't they just give that to their best player, DK? He's just as a physical freak. He's probably he's just as fast as John Ross.
Yeah.
So, or like I keep saying John Ross like he's on the team, but a third receiver to me is what John Ross is. Thank you so much for listening to The Stampede. My name is Ryan Jones, along with my colleagues Ashton Yanez and Nick Romero. Whatever platform you are listening on, please do yourselves a favor. Do us a favor and subscribe so you never miss an episode of The Stampede. And please leave a review, like the video, comment. Just give us feedback. We want to know how we're doing here. All feedback is appreciated. With that being said, this has been The Stampede. We will see you next time.